Everybody, my name is Prowz and this is part 6 of my Combat Rogue guide. In this part of the guide I will be talking about our offensive cooldowns and how to properly manage them, as well as going into Rogue passive Restless Blade, which is very relevant when it comes to offensive cooldowns. So, let's start by going through the tooltips. First we have Adrenaline Rush. This cooldown increases your energy regeneration rate by 100% and your melee attack speed by 20% for 15 seconds. And while Adrenaline Rush is active, the global cooldown of Sinister Strike, Revealing Strike, Eviscerate, Slice and Dice and Rupture is reduced by 0.2 seconds. Now the first part is pretty obvious, just makes you attack faster and makes your regeneration a lot faster. But the second part, some of you might not know what a global cooldown is, I'll just explain. It's the very short cooldown that you'll see when you use an ability before you can use the next one. So you'll see me pressing Revealing Strike here, and that cooldown, the very short one, that's the global cooldown. It stops you from being able to just spam the button and do insane amounts of damage, since you're just spamming your button over and over. So that's the global cooldown. And and it's reduced by using Adrenaline Rush. The reason for the reduction is partially because it allows us to spam our abilities faster to increase our damage even more, but also because otherwise we would be energy capping during Adrenaline Rush because we just have so much energy to spend. So it's impossible not to cap unless you implement this reduction in the global cooldown. So that's the first cooldown, and I'll just skip over it. It'll often or almost always be used in conjunction with another one of our cooldowns called Shadow Blades. Now what this does, it draws upon the surrounding shadows to empower your weapons, causing your auto attacks to deal pure shadow damage, and your combo point generating ability to generate an additional combo point when used. Both this and Adrenaline Rush has a 2-minute cooldown, meaning that you can use these at the exact same time, and they will complement each other, allowing you to attack with your melee attacks way faster. So what Shadow Blades does, which is interesting because a lot of rogues doesn't really realize the full potential of this ability. They mostly just see the additional combo point generated when used, meaning that your Sinister Strike, instead of generating 1 combo point, it generates 2, and sometimes getting a proc generating 3. But what Shadow Blades actually does, the actually most important part of this cooldown, is that it makes your auto attacks deal pure shadow damage. That is insane, and I'll tell you why. Usually our auto attacks deal physical damage, and physical damage is affected by armor, and everything has armor. Even bosses and mobs have armor, even though you can't really tell on some of them. But everything has armor. All our auto attacks and all physical damage is reduced when striking a target with armor. So shadow damage, on the other hand, it is not affected by armor, meaning that when our auto attacks deal shadow damage, they completely bypass the target's armor, dealing insane amounts of damage. That's huge, actually, ignoring a target's armor. So that's a very key part in the Shadow Blades ability, and that's why one of the reasons why it works so well with Adrenaline Rush, because Adrenaline Rush increases our melee attack speed by 20% for 15 seconds. So that kind of part, the melee attack speed increase of Adrenaline Rush complements the shadow buff of the Shadow Blades that makes our auto attacks be shadow damage, and the combo generation increase of Shadow Blades complements the energy regeneration rate of Adrenaline Rush very well, since we get to spam more of our combo points abilities. So there's rarely, or if any, reason not to always use these together, and I even have them macroed together. Some combo rogues I've heard prefer to use them separated during Bloodlust, since during Bloodlust you will be energy capping if you use both of them at the same time. But I just feel that it's way more important to get them both on cooldown and to have the them complementing each other. So I use both of them at the same time always. I've never had any problem with this, and if you think I'm wrong, and by all means contact me and explain your reasoning, and maybe you're right, and maybe then I'll update the guide and say something else. But for now, I just recommend you make it into a macro and just have them always together. And then we got the last, or not last, but the last important offensive cooldown on combat rogues, which is Killing Spree. This is a really fun and really dangerous ability to use. It makes you step through the shadows to an enemy within 10 yards, attacking it every 0.5 seconds with both weapons until 7 assaults are done, increasing all damage done by 50% for the duration, and it cannot hit invisible or stealthed targets. When used on single target, this will just sort of port you to the target repeatedly. So if you're standing really close to target, you won't really notice it. You'll just jitter a bit and not be able to control your character, and it'll bounce to your... But if you stand a bit away, or if the target's moving, you'll constantly bounce to the target. So it's great for like keeping up with movements, apart from obviously being great for doing damage. So you just use it and it ports you to the target. Now, this ability is affected by Blade Flurry, which is the reason why I felt necessary to talk about Blade Flurry and Bandit Scale before making this offensive cooldown video. Because the way it's affected with Blade Flurry is that when you have Blade Flurry activated, instead of porting you to the one target that you have targeted, it ports you to any enemy within the sort of range of the ability. So it says here, Blade Flurry effect. Killing Spree will teleport you to and damage a nearby enemy target every 0.5 seconds instead of focusing on your primary target. So it just bounces you around and around. And it's slightly dangerous to use it with Blade Flurry because you might not end up where your target is. And if your target is a priority, so you want to be hitting that, you might say if I used it here, I might end up at this back instead of over there when the effect ends. And that's a problem because then I have to move. But generally speaking, don't worry about it, and if you have a talent like Shadow Step, you can just port back to the target very quickly. Or you could use the glyph that I talked about in the glyph video, the glyph of Killing Spree, and what this glyph does is that when your Killing Spree ends, you will return to where you started. So as you saw when I earlier used Killing Spree, I stood here and I ported to behind that target, and after the effect was over, it just stayed back here. But if I have this glyph equipped, which I will just leave comment really quickly and get that going. Come on, please. Of course, it's always so slow. There we go. Now we got this glyph. You'll see I'll be standing here. I'm using the Killing Spree without range. And when the effect ends, as you see here, I'll be ported back here. This is... most fights, I usually don't recommend this glyph, since it will just pull you out of melee range. Since you usually just use Killing Spree, and sometimes you use Killing Spree when the boss moves, and then you want to keep going with the boss. But some fights it's useful, especially fights where you'll end up like above a cliff or something, if you don't port back to the original spot. So that's Killing Spree, the basics of it anyway. Now the way you use these abilities. Oh, actually, let me go into the passive first. So let's find the passive. The passive I'm gonna talk about is this one, Restless Blades. It's one of the key rogue passives, and combat rogue especially. So all rogues doesn't have this, it's just the combat rogues. And the way this works is that your damaging finishing moves reduce the remaining cooldown of your Adrenaline Rush, Killing Spree, and Shadow Blades ability by 2 seconds per combo point. And also it reduces some other cooldowns, and this is also really relevant, I guess, that it reduces the cooldown of Redirect and Sprint by the same amount as it does the other. So it means you'll be able to use Sprint a lot and Redirect a lot, especially if you have the glyph that I talked about in the glyph video. But let's get back to the damaging cooldown. So what this does is that for every combo point you have on the target, when you use a damaging offensive combo dump, so basically when you use Eviscerate, Rupture, or Crimson Tempest, you will reduce the cooldowns of all these abilities by 2 seconds per combo point. So if you have a full 5 combo points when you use your Eviscerate, you will reduce the cooldown of Killing Spree, Adrenaline Rush, Shadow Blades, and Sprint and Redirect by 10 seconds. So what this does is that makes you use, it allows you to use your your offensive cooldowns a lot more often than you would think if you just saw the cooldowns. So for example, I've got my killing spree. I'll just, if anyone notices, it says 2 minutes. Usually Adrenaline Rush is at 3 minutes cooldown, and Killing Spree is at 2 minute cooldowns. But I've got this very sick trinket, Assurance of Consequence. You'll see that it's Heroic Warforged. It increases the cooldown recovery rate of 6 of your major abilities by 50%. For me, it's most of my damaging abilities. So basically, it cuts them by 50%. So 3 minutes become 2 minutes. 2 minutes become 1.33 minutes. Yeah, I'm really lucky to have this trinket. I've got it because, well, frankly, our guildmaster is way nicer than he should be. His name is Thella. He's the guildmaster of Legion V, which is my guild, and he's a combat rogue as well. And he gave me this trinket, even though he should have taken it, because he's crazy. So yeah, that's that. And back to the cooldowns now. Now, what was I saying? Yeah, so Restless Blades, basically it makes it so that you won't be wanting to cast your finishers when you already have these off cooldown, when you have your offensive abilities off cooldown. I'll just really quickly, Adrenaline Rush and Shadow Blades will be on the same cooldown all the time. So if I show you some DPSing later, you will see the Adrenaline Rush cooldown, but never the Shadow Blades. But Adrenaline Rush and Shadow Blade cooldown is the same one. Just look at them like the same cooldown. Now, so your damaging finishing moves will reduce the cooldown of your major offensive abilities. So this makes it so that you'll want to use these as early as possible, obviously, and that goes for all classes. Usually, you'll want to throw your cooldowns at the start of the fight because of trinket procs and such. But for combat rogues, it's also because we want our abilities to be on cooldown, so we won't be sort of wasting our ability to reduce their cooldown. Because any finisher that you use, any offensive finishers, I should say, this isn't affected by Slice and Dice or Recuperate or things like that, but any offensive finisher that you should throw will sort of lose you DPS if you throw it when our offensive cooldowns are off cooldown. So, for example, at the start of the fight, I'll want to use let's just go through this real quickly. Obviously, Adrenaline Rush in conjunction with Shadow Blades increases our energy regeneration, allowing us to throw more combo point generators, and also increases the amount of combo points we get. Will of course insanely much increase our ability to use finishers. What this means is that you'll always want to use Killing Spree before you use Adrenaline Rush. The reason for this being that when firstly, you never want to use Killing Spree and Adrenaline Rush at the same time, and you'll always want to use Killing Spree when you're at least semi-low energy, because you can't use your abilities when you use Killing Spree. So when I'm DPSing, I'll be wanting to, and you, of course, you can't use any abilities. You want Slice and Dice to be on for a long period of time, so you want to drop it during the effect time. So what I'm doing here is that I'm getting low on energy, and then I use Killing Spree. So you'll see I can't do anything right now. I was sort of capped there, but only a little, half a second or something, and then I keep going. And now is where I would use my Shadow Blades and Adrenaline Rush. And I can just spam these, and you'll see the cooldown of my Killing Spree, how it's reduced very quickly, and you'll see like it's barely been 10 seconds since I used it, and it's already almost off cooldown. So what they say 10 seconds actually turns out to be like, what they say 2 minutes actually turns out to be like 15 seconds or something of a cooldown. That's because I used my Adrenaline Rush. Obviously it'll be a bit slower otherwise. And you saw there I cast a Eviscerate, even though I had Killing Spree off cooldown, and now I'm gonna do it again. And you see, that's 20 seconds worth of reduced cooldown that I could have reduced my Killing Spree cooldown with. That's crazy, that's stupid, so never do that if you can. Use your Killing Spree before you use your finishers. And now you see I've got my finishers, I can do this. So that's it. That's one of the main things. Use killing spree. Killing spree is one of those things that I'll use almost on cooldown every time I can. Obviously I'll usually be energy capping a bit, but use it on cooldown. Try to deplete as much of your energy as you can, but use killing spree almost on cooldown. And also, if I'm in a situation like this, I've got 20 seconds left on my killing spree, but I've got my adrenaline rush off cooldown. Now, if I use my adrenaline rush, that's a lot of finishers I would be using when I can't use killing spree, and thus killing spree would end up being actually longer cooldown than it would have been had I waited a bit and used it before I use adrenaline rush. So when you've got like 20 seconds left on your killing spree, try to wait it out. Try to wait that out before you cause your adrenaline rush. So you wait off killing spree off cooldown, you use killing spree, and then you use adrenaline rush and shadow blades. Because that way you'll get your killing spree off cooldown way quicker, and it's usually a DPS increase. Of course, you'll have to use your common sense and stuff. It's hard to say when it's at like 30 seconds. It's usually a judgment call. It depends on the fight. So make that decision for yourself, and I'll consider your insight level as well. And that's the second part I'll touch on really quick. I explained deep insight and all the insight levels. Bandit's Guile in the last part of the guide. It increases your damage by 0, 10, 20 and 30%, and of course you want to factor this in when using your cooldowns. Now, as I've already said, you don't really want to keep your cooldowns off cooldown for any extended period of time, usually. But a good rule of thumb is that if you can increase your insight level, that is, move up in your insight level in about 2-3 seconds, then it's worth hanging on to your killing spree and your adrenaline rush for a while, just so you can get that increased damage. And also, if you can move up without actually using a finisher, that's also important. If you can, like say for this, I could use it now, but I could just spam a few more abilities and then it'll do 20%. 10% increased damage compared to if I had cast my killing spree right away. So I'll just keep going like this. Say that it's off cooldown now. Now I don't want to waste any more combo points here, since I don't want to cast my finishing moves before I use my killing spree, since that would waste 10 seconds of potential cooldown reduction from my killing spree. So I just keep on going like this, and then cast my killing spree. So the point is, you have to factor in both your restless blades, the amount of cooldown reduction you can do to your abilities, and your bandit's guile level when figuring out if you should or should not cast the offensive ability. But a good rule of thumb is that when in doubt, just cast it. Try to deplete your energy, try to move up insight level and have as many stacks of anticipation as you can, but generally speaking, if the cooldown is off cooldown, you'll want to use it as soon as possible without casting any finishers before, if you can. Of course, if you're about to have an energy cap, you'll want to cast a finisher and deplete your energy a bit before, but generally speaking, try to have as many anticipation stacks as possible, try to be as high a insight level as possible, and try to have your cooldown off cooldown for as short amount of time as possible before using it again. So that's sort of the basic of cooldown management for a rogue, and how you use it in conjunction with the Bandit's Guile and Restless Blades. I'll probably do a just full-on this is how I do my total rotation, and just show you myself spamming on the dummy with some commentary later on. But for now, this is how Rogue's offensive cooldowns works. And yeah, I'll just quickly touch on as well. We also have Vanish here as a slight DPS cooldown. It is actually a DPS increase to just use Vanish quickly and get a ambush in, if you can do that in a fight. And the DPS increase of this is there. It is relevant to do this, and if it's a straight up just fight where you don't have to worry about anything, then just use it. And also, of course, you can use preparation and do another Vanish. But sometimes I like to hold on to Vanish, for example on fights like Thok, you know, in Siege of Orgrimmar, the dinosaur, for those of you who might not be down with all the names there. The dinosaur, when he focuses you, for example, and starts charging toward you, you know, in the kiting phase, you can actually vanish that. So that's one reason to save Vanish. Other reasons is for defensive purposes, basically. So use Vanish if you don't feel you need it in the fight, but it's not a huge deal, and it's not reduced in cooldown by Restless Blades. So the most important part of the cooldown is Adrenaline Rush, Shadow Blades, and Killing Spree. And those are the ones you want to get off cooldown as quick as possible. And make sure, remember, Killing Spree before Adrenaline Rush and Shadow Blades any day of the week. Because, and even if you have like 10 or 20 seconds left, just get it off cooldown, use it, and then use Adrenaline Rush, because you will be able to use Killing Spree so much quicker again that it's worth it. Yeah, that's... Well, it's definitely not everything I can say about Rogue cooldown management, but I think it's the most relevant stuff. If you got any questions, just throw them in the comments or shoot me a message. If there's anything else, yeah, same. And thank you for listening. I'll see you in the next part.